So good afternoon. Want to welcome you all to the third and virtual training institute. This is the fourth and final day. So as you enter in, if you would please put in the chat box where you're from, and if you could change the to so that it reads all panelists and attendees, then everyone can see where you are from. So Jay, just wanted to let you know that there's, I don't know if you meant to do this, there's a square covering up the middle of your, there you go.
You're seeing things. You didn't really see that.
Okay. And you'll also want to take a look at the slide that is in front of you.
They can actually start working on the puzzle so that they have an answer when we're ready to go.
So again, for those who are just joining us, if you could please put in the chat box where you're from, and you want to change it to read all panelists and attendees. I'm just going to give a couple more seconds for people to get in. Okay, so I am going to launch a poll so that we know what role you play in your program, so that we know who we're presenting to this afternoon. So if you wouldn't mind making a selection, that would be great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. Oh, there's a few more still coming in. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So as one might expect, primarily ABE instructors, and for the most part, pretty evenly split between IS, ESL instructor, and other stakeholders. So you are going to get you can get a proof of participation. I will put that in the chat box at the end. So let's see. So some of the answers that we got, Jay, are, let me scroll.
Yeah, I'm looking at them as they go.
You see them? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jay Willetts, who is going to give us his presentation. Take it away, Jay.
All right, thanks, Ramona. Nice seeing Ramona again, and nice seeing all the people, at least some of your faces and some of your names. Happy to have you with me today. We're going to have a power-packed presentation. I'm pretty sure ahead of time that I already have too much to cover in an hour, but it's designed so that we can move forward, and whatever we don't get done will be fine, because you're going to receive this complete PowerPoint. And let's start with this point. First of all, I saw all kinds of answers, ranging from as low as 10 up to 60 something. And I want to congratulate Linda Godfrey, I think her name is, for having the correct answer. Now, you're going to see in front of you a math puzzle. This math puzzle, I use these types of things in a lot of my classes. I use them at various levels, and I use them for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to be sharing puzzles with you throughout the presentation. And at the end, I have a bunch more puzzles, which I'll just send along with the PowerPoint. These kind of puzzles do a lot of different things. They help to increase the students' visual skills. It helps them with some maybe algebra reasoning. It helps them with all different math operations, including at the very bottom, we see that we have a little order of operations situation. And it's sort of you can translate this into a word problem, and you can see it visually. So if we were to do this visually, a lot of students are a little bit better at visually answering something than they are with the algebra part. But we want to sort of train them to do this algebraically. So if we look at the top, we have 3, and I use W for wrestlers, equals 15. So each of them equal 5. We have 3 masks, which equal 9. So each mask equals 3. We have 3 barbells, which equals 18. And I'm showing you how we do this visually. So B equals 6. And now what some of you probably did not notice, because we had a variety of answers, and this does teach observation skills, or if you're doing a word problem, are you reading it carefully? So notice we have 2 barbells. So it's twice 6. And notice we have the wrestler, but he's got a barbell in his hand, and he's wearing a mask. And then instead of adding the mask, we're multiplying. So we have to do the multiplication before we do the addition. And the final answer is 54. So hopefully several people had that answer. The first one I saw with the correct is Linda, I guess Godfrey, Jeffrey, I'm not sure. Okay, so welcome to our presentation of using PowerPoint in virtual classes for effective math instruction. Now, this is not a workshop in how to do PowerPoints. And I will certainly give you hints along the way to make effective PowerPoints. But hopefully you will be able to get a lot of not only PowerPoint presentation aspects, but also good effective math instruction. I'd like to thank the South Baltimore Learning Center, and I see my IS, Judith, is in the audience. Thank you for supporting me and for giving me the ability to do this presentation. Okay, now the first thing I want to start off by saying quickly is that after teaching virtually for about 6 months, I felt something was lacking. And what was lacking was that I was really not seeing what the students were seeing. I saw on my own laptop that I was doing teaching away and looking at it. And what helped me to be a much better instructor, I think, was that I worked from my laptop, and I also then entered the class as a student also by sending myself an invitation. So while I'm teaching on a laptop, I'm looking at what the students are seeing on my desktop. And just a little bit ago, you saw a big black square in front of the presentation. And I was doing this for a long time. And what happened is I'd open up the chat box, or I'd open up the participants list and be looking at it. And then I looked over, oh my goodness, I'm blocking everything I was showing. So this is one of the reasons why, if you can do this, it greatly enhances your teaching. Notice right here, this nice blue wire. That's a hard wire to my Wi-Fi modem. And that gives me much more strength, okay? Now, we were going to try to teach annotations today. And I'm not going to be able to do that because I find out that the Zoom webinar doesn't allow for the audiences to participate like that. But notice my little 3D guy, the PowerPoint has a new 3D area, and you can put all kinds of neat things into it. But basically, when you work with your students, and hopefully you already know how to do this, but if you don't, you have your students go to where it says you are viewing Jay Willetts' screen, and you should be able to see that. And then you click on view options, and you click on annotate, and then that gives them a whole menu of things to work with. So what I had intended you to do to practice this today, first of all, write your initials using the text feature, and then connecting these dots with a straight line, and then putting an X in this triangle, and then finally showing me a prime number. So let's move on. What we're going to be talking about today are some things you can use for class openers, warm-ups, brain teasers, math puzzles, math games, and all kinds of stuff. And of course, to make it all interesting, I love to put cartoons and pictures in. For instance, when I saw this, the librarian is saying, who's putting all the math books in the horror section? Of course, and I'm hearing laughter. I'm pretending I'm hearing laughter because my students think this is real good. All right. So one of the things that I start with, well, a warm-up would be this type of question, okay? And Ramona, you can, if you will, help me looking in the chat box. If I were to ask the students, if I give them the box, I call this box of numbers, and I say, which of them, one of these numbers doesn't belong? Okay, so take a look at it for a second and tell me which of these numbers you don't think belongs. Okay, I see 48.
28, 49.
Oh, I'm actually seeing the chat.
Okay.
So, hi, Lynn Pender, 49. Okay, looks like everybody's basically saying, some of them are saying 49, some of them are saying 16. Okay, all right, so there's a variety of answers for this, and this is why I like this kind of an activity, because most people choose 49, and then I ask a very important question, why? Why is 49? Because they can often pick 9 or 49, but they can't tell me why. So, and this is an activity too that I often do in the breakout rooms. I'm sure some of you have used breakout rooms. Some of you maybe are afraid to do that because you're not sure how it works. But this is a great activity to put students into breakout rooms because they can work together as a team and figure it out. So most people say 49, and then we say why? Well, first of all, it's the only odd number and everything else is even. Or they may say 49 is not a multiple of 4 and all the others are. So not only are you having them to increase their observation skills, you are teaching them math vocabulary, like odd versus even, and multiples versus factors. Every time I do an activity like this, I always have multiple objectives in mind. And this is an example one. Now, I didn't see anybody say the number 4 doesn't belong. And what happens is that this is probably too simplistic. And I say, well, think about if you were a 3rd grader and you looked at this. And, oh, it does belong because it's only a single digit and the rest are all double digits, okay? And then some of you said 28 doesn't belong. And 28 doesn't belong because it's the only number that's not a perfect square. So this activity has a variety of answers, and in using it, you have a variety of different math terms that you can talk about. And this is usually the last answer I get, and I want to make sure they have a very good understanding of exponents, perfect squares, and things like that. And as we go on, then I send my students all kinds of what I call information sheets. I send them a list of what we call perfect roots or perfect squares. I'm sure as many of you I saw are instructors, you know that students have a difficult time with exponents and square roots. In fact, this is right up on the top ranking of the questions that students get wrong. It's right on the top. The Pythagorean theorem is actually the most missed question on the GED test. And right below that are working with exponents and square roots. So the GED test expects the students to know the squares and perfect roots of numbers between 1 and 12 plus 15 and 25. So you might want to note that. They are expected to know the perfect squares or the squares of all the numbers 1 through 12 and 15 and 25. So I do a lot of activities which reinforce that. So here's a nice little puzzle I found. Actually, I did find this, but I created it myself because sometimes you can't take these things out of the where you found them. So I am a great, like all teachers, and to just admit it, you love to beg, borrow, and steal stuff, books, worksheets, PowerPoints, all kinds of stuff, because that's where we get all of our bag of tricks. So I see we have several people saying that 36 is the answer. And of course, this reinforces the square, 2, 4, 3, 9, 6, 36. Okay, so I'm going to go through several sections on this PowerPoint. And what happens is that I have developed PowerPoints over the years. And I have used bits and pieces from all of these PowerPoints in this presentation. I'm just doing the highlights. So one of my basic PowerPoints is, do you know the basics? And every test, every class I start with doing a basics test. And this gives them 30 questions, 10 whole numbers, 10 fractions, 10 decimals. And it gives me a good idea of where they are with the basics. And you know that students struggle with those basics. And even though I teach mostly advanced classes, I still have students who can't find lowest common denominators, and they can't divide decimals, and so on and so forth. So I really like to make sure that students have a good idea of the basics. And I always tell the students also, I said, this is not a basics class, but we're going to start out and give you some activities which will identify which basics you remember and which ones you need to review. And then I give them resource. Okay, you're having trouble with fractions. Here's what you need to do. Go here, go there, do this, that. Because if we spend half of my advanced class doing basics, you know where I'm not going to be able to get to. Okay, so basically, my students tend to have more trouble with decimals. than they ever do with fractions. And of course, they have less trouble with whole numbers. So I always make sure they understand decimal place value. So here might be a question: what's the place value of the underlined digit? Now, you can either do these as a PowerPoint, you can do them in class using a whiteboard. If you missed my presentation on Tuesday, how to create Microsoft quizzes and tests, I use a lot of these questions in that, and then as I review the results with the students, I use it as actually a teaching activity. So what would be the place value of this underlined digit? Well, it's obviously the hundreds, but you know what the students often say? They often say tenths because they look at it in the second place. And then I also have an opportunity for, making sure they see the THS ending on the end of the word, designating it's a decimal. So when I give them problems like this, I sometimes don't give them choices. And sometimes I give them choices. And I think creating the correct kinds of choices is just as important as what the actual question is. And of course, rounding off this number to the nearest tenth would be 26.2. Okay. All right. Then I make sure that they can understand how do you change a fraction to a decimal? And you just read it, 7/10, so it's 7/10. And what's the fractional equivalent of 0.13? Well, we just read it 13/100, so it's 13/100. Okay. Now I know I am going fast. It's probably a good feature that we can't do this annotation because we would still be on probably the third question. So, all right. Now here's another thing that I think is incredibly important with students in fractions, because you know what happens with fractions and students. You can put an algebra equation and they can solve it, but boy, you put a fraction in there, it's like, oh geez, I don't know what to do. They think, oh, I have to change the whole strategy here because it's a fraction, and so on and so forth. And you know this as well as I do. So I want to make sure that when we start out, that they understand that of means multiply. So I'm really taking 1/2 of 70, which is the same thing as dividing 70 by 2. So if you take 1/5 of a number, you divide it by 5. If you take 1/10 of a number, you divide it by 10. And then I use that skill to move on and say, what happens if it's 2/3 of 60? Can I still use that same operation? Of course. Now I have to divide by 3, but then I have to multiply that by 2 because I have 2 of those. Okay. All right. Now, we're not going to do this problem because it's one of the questions that the GED test loves to do. They love for you to rank stuff, okay? So if I say, if you put these numbers in order from the least to greatest, which of these is the correct choice? And here I use a teaching strategy which is called, if you're not sure, let's see what we can eliminate. And again, this is one of these questions that has so many different concepts. We have fractions versus decimals. We have negatives versus positives. Okay. Now, can somebody in the audience just tell me what is the lowest number? What is the lowest number there? I'm going to be looking at the chat box. Okay, Amy. Hi, Amy. Yeah, she says 0.7, and that's, minus 0.7. So right away, if I know that's the least, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Oh, then I can get rid of that, and I can get rid of that. So now I'm down to 2. All right. So what would be the next lowest number, okay? And of course, the next lowest number is minus 1/2. So, oh, I can't eliminate anything yet. Wow. So I got to keep moving. The next lowest, 1/4. I still have to keep moving. What is the highest number here? What is the highest number? If somebody can tell me the highest ranking number. Yeah, it's 3/5 because that's 0.6. So now I can finally eliminate this one, and this has to be my answer. Okay, thank you for all participating in that. Okay. All right. Here's another skill that I often have the students work on, and it's called, what did I do wrong? Okay. So a lot of times the GED test will show a question, and they'll purposely make a mistake in it. And then the student has to find where that error is. So in this activity, I'm going to show a question. And if it's correct, they just put a check. And if it's wrong, they have to tell me it's wrong. And what would be the correct answer? So I'm going to say a question would be, what would be the lowest common denominator to use when adding these three fractions? I'm going to say the lowest common denominator is 12. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Pamela. Yes, the answer is 12. So I can give myself a check, or the students can give me a check. Okay. Now, there's a couple of ways I use an activity like this. Number one, and I don't want to say this too loud, but this is actually one of the questions on the GED test. Okay. I don't want to say it too loud. Now, to be fair, I don't know what the numbers they are used, so I teach them that skill. And this is one of the ones that they use the question on the part where they can't use the calculator. So I always teach lowest common denominator, and I know you do, but I never thought how to teach it with three fractions. Okay, so this is one of the questions that they will see. So I want to make sure they always do it with three denominators. Now, here's another way I'm going to use a question like this. My students hate it when I say, teach me how to find an LCD. Boy, that's a great teaching strategy. When we are explaining something or doing something or explaining something, I'll say, okay, here's a problem. Teach me how to do this. And boy, when students, they often know the answer, but when they start fumbling around with, well, you do, and boy, the ones that can do that, they really understand the process. Okay, so 6 squared. Students say 12. Of course, that's wrong, and they tell me, oh, it's 36, because it means 6 times 6, not 6 times 2. Okay, 2 to the third. I'm saying it's 8. Yes or no? Well, of course, that is correct, because it's 2 times 2 times 2. And one of the things that helps you is that when you visualize, and of course, that's a key term in math instruction, is visualizing. They should never get 6 squared wrong when they learn it means 6 times 6. Okay? Or 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2. So then after I've given all this big long explanation about what that means, I say, I'm going to trick you all right now. I'm going to trick you right now. What is 1 to the 9th power? And you know what they say. What do they say? Anybody in the chat box can help me? You're darn right, Amy and Aaron and Jesse and Glenn and all those. Yes, they say, oh, it's 9. And I say, wait a minute, what did I just say? Doesn't 1 to the 9th power mean 1 times 1? Okay, so again, visually, It helps them. Okay, here's something else I might have done wrong. I'm saying here is a list of ages of men in a poker group. Okay, I'm saying, what is the median age of these men in a poker group? And the answer is 24. Is that correct or is that not correct? Okay, I'm seeing people say it's not correct. And it is 28 because they say that, oh, they know that the mean is the number in the middle. Oh, well, 24, it's in the middle. But if you have taught them that, they have to put the numbers in ordered. So the median is defined as the middle number when the numbers are ordered. Please teach them the term ordered because that's what the GED test does. When the numbers are ordered, means they're in that order. Here's another activity that I often use, and this works on their auditory sense. I'm going to recite an algebra statement. You write down what you hear. A number x decreased by 5 is 20. Right or wrong? Okay. People are saying correct, and it is. Okay. 7 times a number y increased by 14 is the same as 21. Here's what I heard. Is that right or wrong? Okay, people are saying wrong. Of course it's wrong because I didn't say 7 times a number. Okay. Okay. What happens if I have to simplify this? I'm going to say it's minus 5y minus 5y plus 15. Is this right or wrong? And it is wrong. Thank you, Glenn. Because I did what students typically do. They forget about the minus times the positive is minus. And we're going to talk about integers in a little bit, but wow, students have a terrific amount of trouble working with integers, and you know that. Negative numbers just drives them crazy, okay? And this is also wrong for the sake of time, because 2x times x is 2x squared. They got the negative right, but they forgot to do that, okay? And I like to throw a little geometry. You know, 55% of this test that the students are undertaking is algebra. 45% of it is everything else. Ratio, proportion, probability, permutation, sequences, ratio and proportion, percent, and on and on and on. And that includes geometry. So there is some geometry on this. And I'm going to say, what does angle y equal? And I love teaching geometry. I have a whole PowerPoint on geometry, as I do on ratio and proportion, and as I do on basics, so on and so forth. And geometry to me is sort of like a detective game. You look at the clues you see, and then of course you have to know basic things, that this is a straight line, and if I bisect that straight line, I have supplementary angles, and what's left is 65. Okay, let's talk about
Jay?
order. Yes.
We have a question.
Okay.
Are you adding the lightning bolt or check mark on the fly, or do you always need to pre-decide what will appear on your slides?
No, I create the slide. I will put the question in, I'll put my answer, and then I won't show the check mark until somebody said, well, that's right, and then I agree with them. If it's wrong, then I will put the lightning bolt in there so that they know it's wrong. But then they have to tell me what the right answer is. They can usually tell me the right answer, but they often can't tell me why. Okay. All right. So does that answer the question, Ramona?
I think it does, yes.
Okay, very good. All right, order of operations, very, very basic and very, very needy, okay? So I say, okay, here is my order of operations. And you notice when I give them, by the way, what is the answer to this? 7 plus 4 times 3. What is the answer? Boy, Glenn, you are sharp. I hope you're a math teacher. Okay, thank you for everybody. Paulette and Dr. Patricia. Okay, yes, answer is 19. But notice what a lot of people would answer for this. A lot of people would answer 7 plus 4 is 11 times 3. Oh, they have 33. And this is a very crucial thing to do when you're teaching. And that is, as I said before, it's very important that you put in distractor answers, because that's what the GED test does. The GED test knows what they get right, and they know if they get it wrong, they know why they get it wrong, and they put that as one of the distractors, okay? And then, of course, I show it visually. And of course, we all know, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and the P is parentheses, and so on and so forth. Now, when I show this, I make a point of putting the multiply and the division at the same level. And the same thing with the add and subtract. Because what happens here, folks, is that if the question has only multiply and divide in it, that's all it has, then they have to just do it as they see it. And the same thing with add and subtract. Okay. Now here's another teaching strategy. What I'll do is show them, this is rather involved. And I show them this, and then I show them the answer. And I said, okay, how did we get from here to here? Now, if we had time today, and if we were able to do the annotation, I would have somebody in the audience, as my students would. I would say, well, this is what I do first, and this is what I do second, and they show it one by one. And sometimes I call it, let's solve this as a team. I'll say, somebody do the first row, and then they'll go 7, and then they'll square 3, and they'll subtract 5. So we work as a team, and I love to do that, because guess what? They don't know who I'm going to call on next, so they better be there. They better be ready with the answer. And sometimes, if I have a group that really knows each other, and I was mentioned to Ramona before, excuse me, the webinar started, is, you know, I used to think that I would really get to know my students well during the classes, and we did them in person. But boy, I underestimated how close I'd get to these students when we were doing it online. Because in this case, I might say, okay, Glenn, you do the first line. And then I'd say, okay, stop. Or sometimes I'd stop him before he even got through the first line. I said, okay, pick someone else to continue. And it's just all kinds of things. And then, of course, I'm going to show it to them, you know, visually. Okay, I love working with patterns. By the way, when you see these kinds of things, when I put them in here, most of these, well, some of them I created, and some of them I just went out and found. And the greatest place in the world to find images for anything is Google Images. You can go to Google Images and you can put in anything, and they have 10,654 and a half examples, and you just pick the one you need. Okay, so what is the next number in this series? Okay, if you look at that real quick, what would the answer be? Okay, Glenn says 29. Now I'm going to tell Glenn what I tell my students, and don't think I'm being rude, but my students just, they know I'm crazy. I said, okay, Glenn, you can't answer any more questions for a while. You're in timeout. See, you all know that you have students who will monopolize. They're way ahead of everybody else. They're fat. And of course, this is a compliment to Glenn. I'm just showing how I might deal with this. When you have a student who continually just jumps in and pops in with the answer. Now, of course, Glenn's doing exactly what I'm asking him to do. But just for fun, I'll say, okay, Glenn, you're in timeout. You can answer any questions for 5 minutes. So, and they all laugh. And, you know, when the students all laugh, I thought, well, I didn't offend anybody. Okay. So the answer is 29 because, and it's important that they can tell me what the pattern is. Okay. Now, what is the 9th number in this series? Okay. I'm just kidding, Glenn. You can keep answering because I love to see good answers and right answers. Okay. And I love to see wrong answers because that means I have some remediation to do. So this, it would be a question. Hopefully you're looking at this very carefully. Oh, Amy. Now you're in timeout too, Amy, because you can't answer anymore for a while. Okay. So why would it be 81? It is 81. And you know that these are all perfect squares. And they're going to say, oh, it's 64. Well, 64 is the next perfect square, but it's not the 9th one. So again, we do activities that make sure that they are reading it well as demonstrating the knowledge that they need. Now, this is an activity that I do after I've talked about patterns and number series. I'll say, okay, it's your turn, students. Create a number series for the other students to practice on. And I leave an open blank. And of course, they go in and annotate. I don't know about your students, but my students are not very good at coming up with questions. They can answer most of the questions, but they're not good at coming up with questions. And they have a real difficult time doing this. And then I'll have somebody put up a number series and they'll say, okay, so what is the pattern? And they can't tell me. I said, wait a minute, this can't be a number series if you haven't demonstrated a pattern. Oh, okay. And then, of course, they erase it and go on. All right. Measures of central tendency. Very important, very crucial to teach. Okay. We look at mean and we look at median. Mean is the same thing as average, and you know they use the word mean. And the middle, I teach it. It's the number right in the middle when they're all in order. And then the mode is the most often, most often. So again, as most of you do, you love to teach visually. So if I got a stack of little blocks and I put them in this order, that says, well, okay, there's 5 data groups and there's a total of 20. But what would these look like if I did an average? So I visually show them, but I'm going to take all of my numbers, divide by 5, and I get 4, okay? And then I can use the same standard and show them what the median means, okay? And then there's no mode. Now, I wish I could claim ownership of this, but I got, and of course, I always change my own numbers and things, but I get lots of ideas from great sites, and I want to highly recommend the website, and I'm going to list these websites at the end. If any of you have never seen www.mathantics.com, go, do not stop at go. The minute you leave this workshop, go to mathantics.com and you will see the most amazing man called Ron. He used to irritate the heck out of me when he first, because he's so silly. But boy, he does get the point across. He does it with videos. And if you will pay for an account, and I never recommend, paying for accounts, but I certainly do with this one, because number one, it's only $10 for educators, $10 for a whole year. So when you get onto mathantics.com, you have access to all his videos. He doesn't do real advanced stuff, but it's everything from place value all the way up to algebra and functions. I mean, it's pretty involved. But as a paid an account, you get access to all his worksheets and exercises and all kinds of things, which is well worth that. So when one of the questions that the GED test will ask about the mean is, they don't ask a regular mean question or an average question, like what's the average of these 6 numbers? They don't ask that. They give you something like, Jay had the following scores in science class. He gives them the scores. And they say, if he wants to get an average of 90, what score does he have to get on this final test to get that A? Okay, that's a typical question they ask. And if students aren't prepared for that, well, I know how to do an average, but I don't know how to do this. And of course, if you teach them, well, so far I have 359 points when I add the 4 numbers, but I have to add 5 numbers. And I'm going to have 450 points. So if I need 450 and I only have 359, still have 91. And obviously, you might want to teach this algebraically for the more advanced students. You can set up as a proportion. This plus this missing number divided by 5 equals 90. And I always teach to turn fractional equations into proportions. And then I get that x equals 91. Ratio and proportion. I think if there's one math operation you should teach, well, you need to teach them all, unfortunately, and I've never been able to do it in one semester. My usual student takes 2 to 3 semesters to be prepared from, and I usually start with the advanced ones, at least the medium ones, middle ones. It takes me 2 to 3 semesters to get them to where they can pass the test. I hope that's not a reflection on my teaching ability, but I think it's where many of our students are. Sure, I've had students that come in one class and they're ready to take the test at the end because, you know, they all come into us at different levels. So the power of, I have a whole program called Power of Proportions, and I think this is in almost half. Do you believe that? Almost half of the activities, half of the math questions on the GED test can be answered with proportions. Unit rates, gas mileage, map scales, percent problems, and it goes on and on and on. So if you give them a question like this, and these are some of the pitfalls to watch for, you have 25 members of a bowling league or voting on raising the dues, 18 members voted in the affirmative. What was the ratio of numbers that voted no? So a lot of students are going to say 18 over 25. No, it's 7 over 25, because how many voted no, not yes? Okay. And of course, you can use proportions in all kinds of triangles and things like that in geometry. So you're just going to set up a proportion. H is to 2.6, as 3.8 is to 1.3. And then I like to teach a universal way of solving proportion. I say, you know, this x, this unknown, could be anywhere of these 4 places in this proportion. So I teach that wherever the unknown is, you cross multiply the 2 and divide by what's across from the h. And with that, we can very easily find the answer. Okay. And I like to throw in cute little pictures. We have a ratio of kittens to puppies at the pet stores 2 to 3. Then how many puppies would you expect if there were 14 kittens? Well, what is my first piece of information I put in? What do I know? The ratio, well, there's in there. You know, sometimes I show the answer and then I say, how do you get this answer? Sometimes I'll have them work it and then show the answer. Sometimes I'll show the answer and have them work towards it. So what do I originally know? I have 2 kittens to every 3 puppies. So if I have 14 kittens, how many puppies would I need? Okay, And again, the x is down here. So I'm going to cross multiply the 2 and divide by the 1, which is crossing the x. And please make sure they know the difference between cross multiplying and cross canceling. I'm always a little bit leery because when I teach them about cross multiplication, they also want to do that when they're cross canceling. Okay. So I have 2x equals 42, so x equals 21. Also, they all you would want to make sure they understand that I can just say, well, what do I do to 2 to get 14? Well, I've multiplied by 7. So 7 3s are 21. All right. And it's very important to have them do a labeling, because the main reason they get these kinds of questions wrong is because they don't label them, so they mix up where they had to put the numbers. And this is the most difficult type of question when you get to the ratio proportion. Most difficult. Because if I say the win-loss ratio for the Baltimore Ravens is 7-3, and if they play 40 games over 3 years, how many would you expect them to win? And you can see the problem here, because when they set it up, they say 7 wins to 3 losses. How many wins? Oh, wait a minute, it's games. So if they label them, they see that they have to change it to 7 wins out of every 10 games. Okay, equals that. Okay. Another type of question. This table shows average weights for children at various ages. Okay. Are these comparisons proportional? And I saw this question in Aztec. You know, I'm a great fan of Aztec. They recently have updated their program to be much more user-friendly. And when I do their drills, I learn so many different ways to answer questions, or rather ask questions. So are these comparisons proportional? Well, no, they're not. Because if you cross multiply, 1 times 25 is not the same thing as 2 times 14. So it's not proportional. Okay. All right. Ramona, I see we only got 7 minutes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It is now almost 2 o'clock. If everybody can stay till 7 o'clock this evening, we'll finish this. If you can't, let me do a little quick preview of where we're going, okay? I'm just kidding about that. All right, so I'm going to go into this mode where I can go through it quickly. From this point on, we do percent problems, and I again use my universal percent formula. I always make sure that they can do percent increase and decrease, where the value differences is the part, not just the part, okay? And of course, I throw in contemporary questions like buying toilet paper, snicker, 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 and math test. Okay, predicting probability, very fun thing, okay? And we teach that the different ways to show probability. You can say there's a favorable chance I want to get ahead, and there's a total possibility of 2. So I show the different ways they can do that. And then when you have dependent probability, for instance, what if I want to roll a 3 and a 4 on a die or dice? Then you have to multiply those, okay? Cookies, hey, Sam picks a cookie, it's peanut butter, and eats it. And now he picks another cookie. What's the probability to be chocolate chip? Well, students forget, wait a minute, we don't now have 30, we have 29, so on and so forth. Okay, then looking at this, hey, wow, I don't see any numbers there. So how can I predict what I'm going to land on a white? So it makes them think about, you know, the whole of a circle and the different parts of the circle and things like that. I want to take a minute to show you this. This is another great website. And again, I have all these listed at the end. www.didax.com. Okay. So just from it, they have these free math manipulatives. Now their site sells all these things, but you can use the section of it, which you can use. Well, let me just quickly show that. Quickly is the operative word, isn't it? Okay, this is didax.com, and you can go down and let's do the spinner. Okay, wow, look at that. You get a spinner and you can say, okay, pick a number, somebody, and they'll pick it, and I'll say, nah, you picked 10, it's 9. And then I can do, like, if I just rolled a 2, what's the probability I'll roll another 2? Okay. And then I can pick the dice one. How much fun is this? And you have to sort of practice with these and learn how to use them. Okay. What would be the probability of me rolling? What would be the probability of me rolling 3 dice and getting a 4, a 3, and a 2? So you can see how these really work. And it's so much fun to do this. Kids love the interactive ability of it, okay? And this is, while I have it, this is mathantics.com. If you haven't seen this, again, check it out. He has wonderful videos all the way from place value clear up to the things with graphs and slopes and exponents. And what I was saying is anybody can look at the videos.
Hi, I'm Rob. Welcome to Math Antics. We've already learned a little about how exponents and roots are used in arithmetic, and now it's time to learn the basics of how they're used in algebra. As you know,
okay, we're not going to sit here and watch this, but you can certainly do it later. If you have an account, and I do, it's only $10 a year, you get exercises with answer keys. You get lots of neat work sheets with answer keys. So this is all available for just $10 a year. But even if you don't want to do that, you can certainly have the availability to, look at the videos for free. Okay, let's go quickly back.
So Jay, we
Yes.
have a question. How do
Okay.
you encourage student participation given the virtual environment besides calling on students to answer questions?
Okay, well, we have the whiteboard, which will, allow them to annotate. I send them worksheets after class, whatever we've been working on, I send them worksheets which will reinforce what we've done. And by the way, I only go over worksheets because when I send them worksheets, I only send them worksheets with answer keys. And so I don't spend half of the next class going over all those worksheets. But since they have the answer keys, I will say, all right, now and I pull the worksheet up and I'll say, let's just do a couple practice problems. And we do them usually as annotation. And then I will say, now, does anybody have any problems they couldn't understand on this one? Okay, so that, there's a lot of ways to facilitate stuff like that. So I'm going to very quickly, we're skipping the algebra and the geometry, but I do want to show you just a couple of things towards the end. Let's see, where are we going here? When you do geometry, make sure and cover surface area. Boy, that's biggie. Okay. And so again, you're going to receive this entire PowerPoint. I do want to show you this particular page. Well, that's not the page I want to show you. Okay. Bear with me 1 minute because we're going to come to an end. Just got to get to the right page. Okay.
So Jay, real quick, you're not able to spontaneously change the check mark or the lightning bolt, right? You just have those predetermined. You can't change those on the fly. Is that correct?
Correct, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the last couple of slides, this is a great place to find math worksheets. Maths is fun. Notice it's MATHS is fun.com. This is a great place. It has a very fantastic dictionary or glossary where they can, I send them a vocabulary list of all the math questions. I'm sorry, math vocabulary terms, and they can get their own definitions. You can do pre-algebra and algebra 2 on this. And it also has a great, I never noticed it before, but up in the right-hand corner on the home page, there's worksheets. And you can generate all kinds of worksheets. I've already talked about Math Antics. Common Core Sheets is great. You can put in a subject line, any type of worksheet you need. And then math-drills.com is another one. Okay. And then I have sent you a lot of additional puzzles, work with fractions, geometry, algebra and geometry, exponents, throw in some sports there for the students, order of operations and systems of equations. I created a word search. I created a math problem search. Here's a bunch of numbers, and you see if you highlight 6 + 3 = 9. You know, and I looked at these a little bit and I thought, oh my goodness, this is hard. I spent like 5 minutes and I finally found 14 - 5 = 9. So I'm not good at words. I can't stand word searches. They are so boring, but this might be more fun. Okay. Now I want to do one last bit of advertisement. I'm going to announce M cubed, and please write this down if you're interested. I did this several years ago when I was highly involved with MACE, and I called it MACE Math Matters. Now it's going to be called Maryland Math Matters, and it's going to be a group for totally math exchange. We're going to exchange warm-ups, puzzles, class activities, websites, worksheets, best practices, teaching strategy, etc. Please contact me at Jay Willetts at southbaltimoreLearns.org. Jay Willetts at, and watch how you spell this, southbaltimoreLearns.org. Please contact me and I'll add you to this list, and you will get a probably, hopefully weekly things that are all of the above. And I would encourage teachers to add stuff too so that we can exchange this. Okay. So I always have fun with math. 4 out of 3 people struggle with math. And there are 3 kinds of people in this world, those who are good at math, and those who aren't. And that's the end. And I include this with one of my favorite shots. I also, when I can afford it on my teaching salary, to go. I've been to Africa a couple times. I've been to Alaska, and this is one of my favorite shots of the cheetahs as the family's walking away and one turns. I think I did this shot the last day. It's the cheetahs are walking away and one of them turns his back and look at me and says, "It's been nice seeing you again, Mr. J. Hopefully you can come back." So here's my contact information. You can reach me through the South Baltimore Learning Center for the Math Matters, or at Community College of Baltimore County. It's Jay Willetts, again, at ccbcmd.edu. And there's my phone number. And with that, I'll leave this up and turn it back over to Ramona. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. I do have many programs. I'm going to get some information out to the ISs of all the programs. I'll be happy to either come to your college or your institution. Institution? No, you're not. You know what I meant. I could be happy to come to you virtually or in real and do any kind of programs you'd like all about math. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. And Ramona, you have a little closing to do?
Yes, so I dropped the feedback survey in the chat box and also the proof of participation. So we'll do the proof of participations all in one proof. Please allow at least a week for us to process those. Also, the feedback survey, if you wouldn't mind filling that out. And Jay, you are just a wealth of knowledge as always. So thank you very much for your expertise and sharing all the great things that you do for the field and especially for math teachers. So thank you again. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and a good weekend. Thank you.
Ramona, I have one question quickly. Do I get paid overtime for the extra 8 minutes I spent?
We'll work on that.
All right. Thanks. And so long, everybody. Have a wonderful, stay safe, and keep on doing what you do so well.